welcome to Buildings of Tomorrow. I'm Carla Kaduff, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's episode. We're thrilled to explore a fascinating topic that's shaping the future of smart infrastructure, human-centric autonomous buildings. With us today is Jon Lester from Siemens Smart Infrastructure Buildings. Jon, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, Carla. Really happy to join. Thanks for having me.
Great. So let's start from the beginning. What are human-centric autonomous buildings?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I think as an industry, we've talked a lot about smart buildings over the last years, and what we see is human-centric autonomous buildings are that next natural evolution for smart buildings. So building upon all of that connectivity and the capabilities that smart buildings sort of brought into the industry, and starting to really expand and bring further that advanced data analysis and AI capabilities. So really layering those data and AI capabilities on top of that connectivity that smart buildings brought. And that means moving away from kind of reactory and let's say less proactive systems to proactive, predictive and adaptable systems, moving away from things that were maybe hard-coded or predefined to be more adaptable, and getting away from that rule-based approach. And then starting to really shift the way that the operation of a building changes from or is driven. So away from those small bits and pieces through to something that's a bit more holistic, a bit more consistent. And that enables us, in this vision that we look at, to really deliver an unprecedented level of performance, better sustainability, a better user experience, but not just the user, the owner, the operator as well, and just deliver that level of flexibility, knowing more and more the buildings, how they're used today may not be the way they're used tomorrow. The expectations of those users or the companies that are within them shift to change, and that's something that's really facilitated by this. So delivering that ideal internal environment, that indoor condition, ensuring that efficiency and energy efficiency, cost and operational efficiency, delivering levels of all of these performance indicators that was not possible before we had that ability to bring these new technologies in.
Great. And you referred to human-centric autonomous buildings. Can we expand on that? How do human centricity and autonomy really work together here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important when we talk about any of these buildings, in a vast majority of them, like the whole purpose of their existence is to facilitate and support and service the people that are involved in them. Again, whether it's the user, so the people that might come to work or live and learn in those buildings, whether it's the operators that are spending their time operating and managing those buildings, or the owners that then have those buildings as an asset that they need to manage and maintain over time. So, autonomy doesn't eliminate the human. It's actually meant to bring that to the next level, to really facilitate that. And this is not technology for technology's sake. The technology is there to deliver value to those different users and those humans within the building. So that's the focus. And there's a lot in there around that. So, of course, for occupants, changing the experience, giving that better indoor, not just indoor air quality, et cetera, but just the way they're able to interact with the building itself. For facility managers, supporting their daily workflows, improving those workflows, and also changing the focus away from maybe managing daily, simple tasks and being reactionary to really thinking about what happens tomorrow and making more strategic and more impactful decisions. And then for those owners and investors, trying to simplify that very complex landscape and delivering not just cost efficiencies and operational efficiencies, but also delivering ultimately more value for those buildings. So, it's when we talk anything autonomy, anything technology, it's not the technology that's the focus, it's the people and the outcome, the value that it can deliver for those people.
Great. And why now? What makes this conversation especially critical today?
I think that as an industry, but as a society, we're at a bit of an inflection point. Like I always use the proliferation of AI in our daily lives. Where are we today compared to 2 or 3 years ago, when some of these services like your ChatGPTs were only very new or not even introduced, and now it's just core for us. And it's no different in the building industry. The ability for us to deliver some of these really critical and advanced technologies at scale with a level of simplicity that we can bring it to individual workflows has just changed completely over the last years. So that ability to not just collect the data, which was really the focus of maybe the smart building era, and now start to use it and derive value from it, has completely changed. So from a technical perspective, we have tools at our disposal that we just didn't have a couple of years ago. From an industry perspective and from a societal perspective, I think there's also great drivers. So the same trend that we've been seeing for a long time is urbanization, more and more people coming to cities. Cities are growing as the population on the earth grows. Also, we're seeing a skills shortage in the infrastructure and buildings space. So we have, let's say, a challenge that we're not really finding the people with the skills, or the people aren't having the chance to develop the skills that are required to really operate these extremely complex systems that are buildings, that are infrastructure. And despite the back and forth, depending on which country, etc., I think energy efficiency, sustainability, and kind of trying to manage the challenge we have with climate change globally is still there, and buildings are such a huge contributor to that. So there's still this big push to find energy efficiency and to be more effective in managing buildings from an energy perspective. And probably one of the newest ones, because some of these challenges, I guess, are not new, but one of the ones that we certainly see at the moment is just the diversity or the inconsistency from a geopolitical perspective. And like we're recording this in the first half of 2026, the first quarter of 2026, energy prices are under a bit of a challenge at the moment. So when we talk about how do we manage, these facilities effectively, how do we make and take risk out of operating buildings, it's not just about saving energy, saving then the carbon and pushing towards net zero target. It's also about de-risking when there's changes to costs around energy and heating, etc. So all of those drives are kind of pushing us in the right direction. And what we see also is that the industry is kind of keen. They're really excited about getting involved in this. At Siemens, we do every couple of years this large research in the market that we call the Infrastructure Transition Monitor. And what we asked a lot of CXOs in different organizations across the globe in the last 6 months was, when we talk about autonomous functionality, when we talk about AI, especially in their building space, they're really excited to get that involved, to get that into their buildings. So over 50% see the opportunity, over 50% are planning major investment into autonomous technologies into their buildings over the next 12 months. And we're also seeing that 49% of those companies are struggling to hit their targets. So they need to change the way that they're trying to make decisions, how they're trying to operate their buildings to hit those net zero commitments, to hit those operational targets. And our building CEO here in Siemens Smart Infrastructure, Susanna Seitz, sees this as well. There's a quote that she brought out at some point where we were talking about, if you're not managing that energy smartly, if you're not really looking across the whole energy system within your building, you're going to miss your targets. And now's the time that they have to make that change.
Absolutely. And perhaps leaning into the more tangible aspects that make up an autonomous building, which technology is really core to autonomous buildings, and how would you say Siemens enables that?
Yeah, well, the first obvious one is AI. So AI is absolutely essential. This enables systems not just to be rule based and have predefined kind of reactions to certain situations, but actually to be adaptable, to learn, and to then look at previous experience and maybe identify opportunities. And of course, some of those applications are also something we've been doing as an industry for a while. But what's new is that the ability then for AI to start taking actions, to make decisions and implement them, not just come up with recommendations. So that's a big one. I think also IoT and the proliferation of devices that are connected, and any of these kind of systems, including AI, rely completely on understanding what's happening in a space in real time, but also having access to the data from a historical perspective, and making those correlations and those learnings from that. So having transparency and information from the spaces themselves is essential, and I think IoT is certainly making that much easier. And at some point, we'll probably talk a little bit about how do we get out there in the industry and start addressing buildings that are already existing. IoT is really important for that, because it makes it easier and faster to go into an existing building and start to gather some of that data and that insight. I think also, the ability for us and for the industry to start to bring this information together. And I think we've learned a lot from the IT industry, We've learned a lot as an industry ourselves to understand how do we start to get that data together? How do we start to leverage it? How do we start to use it? And like from a Siemens perspective, Building X is that core kind of data platform that gives us the foundation, gives us the access and the level of flexibility within the management and the use of that data to really facilitate this. And I guess important, at least, when we look at the industry, is a lot of that traditional kind of operational technologies, they're still just as important as they were yesterday. Building automation, fire safety, security systems, they're still one of the core sources for that live data, that transparency. So they're still really essential. Ensuring that they're connected, they're bringing data in a structured manner, etc. But they're also the action arm. So if you've got a great agentic AI system that looks at the temperature in a room and then makes decisions based on other data sources to say, hey, listen, I think that we need to change some of the setup in this room, make this change. You still need a building automation system on site to take that information and actually implement it. So, it's not just the new technologies and the new capabilities, it's also those traditional systems. As long as they're connected, as long as they're digital, as long as they're able to be a really active part of those new systems, they're still a huge part of really deploying this capability.
Right. And leaning into that a bit further, what would you say are some of the challenges that, our customers are facing when we look at making buildings truly autonomous?
Yeah, truly autonomous always comes down a little bit to how you define it, but this is a journey. I think, this is not something that we imagine you wake up in a year's time and suddenly you have an autonomous building. This is around bringing autonomous functionality or more autonomy into buildings in different use cases and different situations. So that's certainly one of the challenges. This is not, a one and done. This is a conscious effort moving forward as an industry, starting to apply these capabilities. So that's certainly one. And what we see anyway in the industry, of course, with new constructions, with new buildings driven by the great contributors to the industry like consultants and planners who are really deciding and designing these new systems, leveraging the latest technologies. That's certainly already going really well, I would say. But one of the biggest challenges is a huge amount of the building stock is already pre-existing. I think the statistics in Europe is something like 75% of the buildings that are going to exist in 2050 already exist today, which means we can go and apply the most amazing technology to every new building that comes out from today onwards, but there's going to be 75% of the buildings out there that we have to find a way to implement these kinds of technologies and deliver those unprecedented levels of performance for those existing buildings. And I think that comes a little bit back to what we spoke about a few minutes ago with things like IoT, those easy to deploy solutions, those really flexible solutions that enable bringing that into older buildings, existing buildings, linking different existing systems together. That's going to be really key. So having that ability to kind of manage that and bring that to existing buildings is also one of the hugest or the biggest challenges, I'd say, in this space.
Absolutely. I think another question that we get again and again is how real is this technology today? Are there any sort of, use cases or key offerings that Siemens has when it comes to autonomous buildings?
Yeah, I think it's really important because we're talking here about, and I think I used the word vision before, certainly that full autonomous building is a vision. But this isn't science fiction. Right? We have solutions today in the market. We have solutions that we work on that will be in the market very shortly that already deliver this kind of functionality. So we're walking this journey today, together with our customers, together with our partners. So this is certainly a tangible situation we find ourselves in. And a couple of examples. So as an example, I used the analogy or the thought before around, a room and the system looking in a room in the temperature, the indoor air quality and understanding maybe different changes that could be required based on other data sources. In this case, maybe it's weather data, maybe it's presence, and maybe it's information from the building to know that a room is booked for a larger group or something like this. So we have technology already. We have an offering built on our Building X digital platform called Comfort AI that takes those different data sources and actually starts to make decisions and changes the set points in the room autonomously. So by itself makes decisions to change things, to manage those different changes throughout the day and ultimately save some energy, but also deliver a better outcome, a better experience for users. What we're also seeing in the digital services space is we're moving beyond just being able to analyze data and give recommendations. So trying to find and identify root causes of issues. But we're able to start doing that in a predictive way. So understanding, some of the key indicators that maybe wouldn't be commonly known or easily identified by a manual user, but the system, the AI is able to identify those indicators. And then again, not just stopping at saying, hey, listen, we think when these two things start to happen that your fan might be getting close to having a failure, but actually then starting to manage all of those different opportunities and challenges within a building and start to give not just recommendations, but a scaled recommendation of what can be addressed, what the biggest impact is going to be. So it goes beyond, when we talk about these large buildings, we're talking hundreds of different situations every day that need to be managed by facility managers, and they can only do so much. So really going beyond identifying, predicting, and actually then prescribing actions and deciding or helping the operators within the building to decide where they should go and take their actions first and go from there. So that's really cool. Another one that I really like is hey, I think I've talked a little bit around workflows today. You've got opportunities to really bring AI technology down to individual workflows, but we're also working on bringing light AI agents or relatively small AI agents for specific tasks and putting them on individual devices. So really having the capability of a controller, in this case, to have an AI deployment on that controller, running analytics and making decisions right there locally. So not relying on connections to the cloud, not relying on sending data back and forth, really making that really simple. And we're using that to optimize equipment. And in one case, as an example, making better decisions about running defrost cycles for chillers. So saving energy, extending the lifetime of an asset, which is a large capital investment asset. So really saving time, saving money, saving energy. So really exciting. So there's some of the applications we're seeing. And maybe the last one, it's not just those operational tasks. Getting data into the cloud, getting data structured, all of these things are essential. If you don't have your data well structured with great metadata, if you don't have a foundational kind of model for your data, all these things don't work. So making that faster, easier, and more accurate is a huge application also for AI in this space, and applying AI to the different workflows for things like engineering commissioning. Great opportunities, all areas that we're working and either have offerings already today or coming very shortly that enable us to apply these new technologies across the life cycle of an infrastructural building.
Super interesting. Maybe one final thought, Jon. If there's one thing listeners should take away about human-centric autonomous buildings, what would it be?
Wow, that's a tough one because obviously, if you haven't noticed in the conversation, I'm excited about this, and I guess a lot of people are in the industry. I guess I'd say one of the key things is that autonomy doesn't mean no people. Autonomy means that we're enabling and empowering people. So, we talked about skill gaps. We talked about the fact that, a facility manager in a reasonable sized building is getting hundreds of errors, hundreds of calls every day around sometimes critical things, sometimes really simple things like a hot cold call. So autonomy and in this case, the application of AI is not about removing those people. It's about enabling and empowering them, taking those simple daily tasks off their desk, simplifying their workflows, making it faster and easier. Do they need to find information? Giving it to them in plain language, not having them dig through 1,000 points or having to go back to the manual to try and find something. So that's one thing. I think it's not about removing people, it's about empowering them. And I guess the second one links back to the last question, which is this is happening now. This is not science fiction. This is not us, or the industry dreaming. This is really happening. And the opportunity is right now also for us to take action.
Inspiring words. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jon.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Today, we've explored a topic that merges the best of technology and human experience. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.